Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 30 of the Foundation First Fitness Show with Bob Owen. Today we are talking about new trends that you can try at the gym. They're not new trends, they're obvious trends. They've already existed. They're just things that you might want to try at the gym. Now, before I get into that, I wanted to ask you, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, if you are watching this, hit that subscribe button and let me know what you guys think of this and other episodes. If you are listening to this on the podcast, I have a YouTube channel that I've been working on for about 4 months now, 5 months, 6 months. It's July. It's almost August. Yeah. It's August right now when you guys are listening to this. So it has been 7 months. Jesus, times fly. Now, if you definitely want to check out that stuff, it has a lot of interesting stuff on there. I've been doing a new segment called Move Better Mondays, and every single Monday I post a clip on how to improve your movements, and they're generally series based. So far, a few of them have been so far every single one of them that I've done, except for the first two, have been series based, which is really interesting because they take you through step by step, week by week, how to improve something, how to either get better at moving, get better at something, your lunging, your knee pain, blah, 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 whatever it is. I help you do that by introducing segments on the breakdown of how to improve that. You can definitely check out my channel at Bob Owen. It's basically just type it in on YouTube and it'll pop up. So I appreciate if you could do that. Now, getting into these things. Now, September's a big time for gym goers. It's also a big time for gyms. This is the time where a lot of individuals come back from that summer, the summer breaks. The kids are gone back to school, so it's easier for them to get back to the gym, and it frees up a little bit of time. They're back from their vacations. The weather starts getting a little cooler. They might try stretching a bit of it, but generally around September 1st is a big time for gyms. It's not as big as January, but it is definitely up there. It is the second biggest window for them. So when it comes to what to do, there's obviously a lot of, it's very evident. There's a bunch of different trends out there that are going on right now. HIIT training, CrossFit's been around for a bit now, but HIIT training is another one that's kind of rose in the last couple of months. I want to say months, probably in the last year. Spinning is another big one. There's a lot of new cycling trends that are going on, a lot of different bike group classes that are coming up now. There's bike specific, spinning specific group classes. And then there's obviously your Pilates, your Zumba classes and all that stuff. And those are all great. The boot camp stuff, those are all really good options. If you want to do group class stuff and if it really motivates you to be in those group classes, by all means, go for it. I'm a firm believer of, if you can get to group classes, they're a great way to keep yourself motivated, especially for those of you who are a little bit more, need a little bit more of a push to get to the gym. They obviously hold you a lot more accountable, especially when people start knowing that you haven't been showing up. So the accountability aspect is very high in group classes, which is also why I really like them. Now, but at the same time, there are a lot of individuals that, they still don't have that ability to always be on a regular schedule, to be able to hit that gym exactly when it's convenient for them, or when the group classes are available, so that that 5 o'clock window when everybody's at their group class, 5, 6, 7, when generally all of those classes are happening, the noon, classes, the early bird classes, it's not always available to everybody. So sometimes you have to kind of work around it and get into the gym whenever you can. And sometimes individuals just get bored of getting a program, getting a workout online, and then just walking into the gym and doing your bench press and doing your leg curls and doing all that stuff. Yes, eventually it becomes a little mundane. So there are ways that you can maybe even try exploring new trends that may be really interesting that you can get some results in at the same time. Now, the 3 that I'm going to be talking about are stuff that I usually do with my athletes. So it's not something that's like absurd or out of the ordinary. They're very basic stuff. They're very common things. It's just a way of grouping them so that you can understand what's going to be done, and you can kind of, it's almost like a trend in themselves. The first one is bodyweight workouts. Now, before everyone panics and starts thinking they have to get a pull-up in. If you didn't, you probably just did. Pull-up is one of the exercises. There's still tons of others. Push-up is another exercise. But again, every exercise, what's great about bodyweight exercises is that it's simply very easy to modify all these exercises. Now, a lot of individuals think that if you're doing a workout and if you're doing a bodyweight workout, you basically have to stick to the squats, the pull-ups, and the push-ups, and you can't really veer from them at all. You can. It really depends on your experience level. They're great exercises to get in. Bodyweight exercises are really great. Here's why I really like them. First and foremost, the practicality aspect of them. You can do bodyweight exercises anywhere. That's the best thing. That's the first thing. Bodyweight exercises allow you to be able to work out whenever you want without a lot of restrictions. You don't need much equipment. You can do whenever you want, and you can really start messing around with the different types of exercises depending on your skill level. Now, the other thing that's really interesting, I read a book. I can't remember what the name of the book was, and I don't even remember the author or who was talking about it, which is really bad because I probably should have thought about that or looked that up, but I can't remember. I remember it was years ago that I read. I don't even have the book anymore. And the author basically spoke, and probably the reason why I don't want to remember it is that it was a very, very suspect book at best. But the author spoke about bodyweight exercises, and the point he brought up was actually really interesting because it made complete sense. And it was actually something that I've always thought about. And I kind of went, you know what? That actually makes sense now that we look at it as much as we do. He said that bodyweight exercises, what makes them very unique is that the brain perceives bodyweight exercises as survival. It perceives it as, this is what I need to do to be able to survive. So if I'm lifting myself, if I'm doing a pull-up, we think it's a pull-up, right? But the brain maybe think of it as we're hanging off the side of a cliff. I need to be able to pull my body weight. So because you need to pull your body weight up, your brain starts trying to rearrange itself to burn fat a lot easier or burn off fat more so that you're not carrying dead weight. Because it needs to be able to pull itself, carrying fat is dead weight. It doesn't help you lift yourself. It just weighs you down. So that's a great way to burn off some extra pounds. And the thought process makes so much sense if we just think about the survival mode or the survival mechanisms of that. It starts to kind of make sense, especially when you look at a gymnast who basically lifts their body up every single day. For them, having extra body weight is almost redundant. It's useless. It's a waste of time. We don't need it. Look at sprinters. Sprinters are trying to be as explosive as possible. Extra weight for them, not good. Every single ounce of body weight has to be directly used for performance. That's why marathon runners have a higher body fat percentage than sprinters. If you didn't know, there's a quick piece of interesting facts for you. Marathon runners are actually a higher percent body fat than sprinters, simply because marathon runners need some fat on them so that they can use that as fuel when they are running, so that their body doesn't break down muscle tissue as fast. So the way to do that, and the way to make these workouts really interesting, is essentially just vary them up. You have to know where your limitations are. So if you struggle with the push-up, know your limitations. Don't do it on the ground. Do it on an elevated surface like a bench, or even if you're at home, a bed or a countertop, something that you can basically kind of just prop yourself up onto that's sturdy enough that could support your body weight. Technique-wise, based on the, make sure you keep a nice straight back and all that stuff. If you're doing a pull-up, you can do, it's not exactly the same thing, but you're starting to learn how to kind of pull your body weight, which is really important, is basically do like an inverted row. So you hang underneath the bar and you basically grab a hold of the bar, your body's lying flat. So you're basically as if you were lying down on your back, your hands are up on the bar, you're just pulling yourself up to the bar. Now you can also do a pull-up from a seated position. So basically bend your knees, grab a hold of the bar over your head. I realize you just dropped out of camera view here. You won't be able to see me for that. But you basically just grab a hold of the bar, pull it down, or pull yourself up with your feet on the ground. So some of your weight is being supported by your feet. That will help you progress through that and help you get there faster. So that is the way to get through that. Also, what's really good about bodyweight exercises is that there's so much variety you can do. And everything's based on core control, which is a huge factor. So if you want to get a bodyweight exercise in, a lot of people tell me whenever they've done it, they've always gotten extremely built from it. The guys did. The ladies got very, they got very sculpted. They weren't like overwhelming. It wasn't like bulky. I know a lot of women panic about that. That again is a totally different subject and highly dependent on what you're doing. But you do get some really good results out of it, so you do lean out, you get all the good stuff that everyone wants to get. And it really does build that foundation that I always talk about. And basically the cusp of this entire show is building that foundation. This is one of the huge areas. Building that foundation can come from bodyweight workouts at all times. Big time one. I love it. I've always used it. Great one. The next one is resistant band workouts. Now, resistant bands became, I think they've always been around. Everyone does them, but lately they've gotten a little bit more popularized simply because Tom Brady, so shout out to TB12, actually created a book. He wrote he didn't, I don't know if he wrote the book or whatever. Basically, someone wrote the book, or it's based on his training regimen that's very strict on food and different things. He tends to use resistance bands a lot when he works out. So resistance bands are a big part of his workouts. His trainer likes them. His strength coach is a big fan of them, uses them a lot to maintain that certain level of pliability, which is what he talks about in the book. And he's basically made he's lasted this long simply by taking care of his body. And I know it's not the only thing. I know the nutrition, the sleeping, the focus, and all this stuff is huge other components. But on the exercise side, resistance bands has been one of the major areas. What I like about using those bands is that they come in different forms. So you can get the thick bands, those big thick bands. They're super bands that usually people will like. They'll tie up onto a squat rack to do a pull-up. It'll assist them in the pull-up. See, you can use that for a pull-up too. That's another way of making the pull-up easier. So they'll use it for that. Those bands you can use if you're a little bit more advanced. You can also use the regular bands that come with the handles. And you can also use the ones that I really like, which are those mini bands. So the ones that I use for around the knees when I'm trying to work the hips. You can also use them for shoulder stuff. So there's so many things you can do just with those little with those bands. There's tons of stuff on Instagram. Like everyone's posting. Like if you check out my Instagram page, I've got a ton of different clips on what to do with exercise bands, mini bands, different things like that. So there's tons you can really get done simply by using exercise and resistance bands. And you can do a lot of the basic exercise. You can do the rows, you can do the pushing, you can do the shoulder presses, you can do the lateral raises, you can do the curls, you can do the press downs for your triceps, you can do lunges with them, you can squat with. There's so many ways you can do them. There's so many ways you can use them, and they just basically just applying resistance. And so that's one of the reasons why I like them so much. The other thing is that you can basically bring them anywhere. Like, if you're traveling, I know in terms of equipment, bodyweight exercises is not really comparable to, nothing is really comparable to that, but there's not really much of a stretch to carry a little bag with a bunch of different elastics in there. And so that's a great one to use. That's a great way to get a workout in. And what's really interesting about resistance bands that I like a lot is that the force is continuously increasing as you go through the movement. Not like when you're using a dumbbell, because dumbbell respects gravity, whereas a resistance band doesn't, depending on if you're doing a push-up or a pull-up or something like that, you're doing a bodyweight exercise. But if you're doing like a resisted row or a press or something like that, gravity is not as much of a factor. It's more going to be based on the tension of the elastic and where you are in that range. Are you at the start of the range or at the end of the range? So you can mess around with that as well. The other thing that resistance bands, man, it's almost like turning into a tongue twister. That's the word for me right now. So I don't know why I'm struggling with resistance bands. I think it's my second episode right now tonight. I had to put a bunch of these episodes together because going to a bunch of weddings this weekend and definitely won't have time to get that done. And then following up, I'm going to 2 weddings this weekend, following it up with another wedding the next weekend. So I know 3 weddings in 7 days. I'm going to be feeling it in a week. So, but the thing that's really interesting about them The other thing that's really interesting about them is that when you are using resistance bands, I got it this time, you can actually challenge the core a lot with them. You know I talked a little bit about the core being a huge issue, being hugely impacted by your bodyweight exercises. When you are doing elastic stuff, it's really easy to get that done too. You can get a lot of core stuff in. I do a lot of rotation stuff, anti-rotation stuff, so preventing that rotation. There's tons of stuff you can do with those bands as well. You don't necessarily need to do the crunches, which I'm not really a fan of. They're great depending on how you do them, but the typical mainstream crunch is not so spectacular. Now that brings me into my third one. The third one is a little bit more sports related, but instability workouts. So what I mean by instability workouts it's a fancy title. It basically means using like the stability ball, like a Swiss ball, a Bosu, which is that black on one side, half moon blue ball, blue on one side, black on the other side, different balance boards, different balance wobble pillows or wobble boards, whatever you want to call them. Basically just working on something that's going to cause instability, something that's not structurally grounded and secured. That's going to be great where your body weight is kind of introduced. So this is kind of a mix of the body weight exercises as well. But if you are looking for something a little bit more challenging than body weight exercises, instability is another one. Here is the kind of summation of all of this. They all can be tied together. You can literally do all of them all at the same time. You can take a bodyweight exercise, add a resistance band to it, and then add an unstable surface. You've got an entirely different workout using all three of those suggestions that I gave you. And what's really interesting about them is that all of these, again, are very portable, very cost efficient, and every single gym. I'm trying to really think if there's a way that it wouldn't. I mean, if it doesn't, it's probably just because it is a boot camp specific area and they only have stuff for their boot camps. They don't have like an open gym kind of time frame or for you to just come in and do whatever you want. And that is why all three of these were basically all on my list of new things you can do in September, because sometimes, like I said, you get bored of the basic stuff. So this is a great way to kind of mix and match a bunch of these things. And again, you don't need to stick to just one of these for an entire workout plan for the entire year. You can literally bounce between all three of these. Like you can do one day where you're doing basically just body weight. The next day you're doing elastic work. And then the last day you're doing instability work, and then basically just cycle through that. And you can do that 4, 5, 6 days, and you're going to get a great workout out of them because there's so much you can do with them. Now, what I wanted to add to end off is that these are all basically things that I used to do when I was working pro hockey. When we were on the road, we didn't have access to weights. So we were fortunate. We had a little set of weights, but we didn't have much. We basically had 2 sets of dumbbells. We had not 2 sets. We actually just had 2 dumbbells. So when you only have 2 dumbbells, it's a little bit more difficult to train 20, 25 guys on the road. You need to come up with other stuff to create more exercises. So what I do is I would use the elastics, I would use body weight exercises, and I would use unstable surfaces. So like stability balls were a big one for me. And I was able to get really good workouts out of them, get what I wanted out of them with the guys. And it was just enough to hold them over for that 1 to 2 week period that we were on the road until we got back home and we had our full gym. These are professional athletes and they were getting a pretty decent workout out of them. So if you are creative with your programming with them and you just kind of mix some stuff up, you're going to be able to get a solid workout out of these. I will post 2 or 3. I'm going to write that down because I know I'm going to forget. I will post 2 to 3 options for workouts that you can do incorporating. And basically remember that if you are incorporating one, you can basically do them with all of them. I mean, the elastics, you can add a little bit more because it's going to add it. Basically, it's like an external stimulus or an external resistance that you can add. It's not just your body weight. Post 2 to 3 options for workouts in the description. It will, however, be, it might be on the podcast as well. I think I can actually fit it. Yeah, I can fit it in the podcast. So it's going to be in the podcast as well. it'll be on the YouTube description. So it's going to be in both of them. So both of you, both populations right now that are listening can either see it on the podcast, listen to it on the podcast and see it in the description, or YouTube can see it in the description. And you guys can let me know what you guys think about this. Again, this stuff is going to be, these are just 2 or 3 options. They're basically, I'm going to go like a light, easy one, moderate, and then a more aggressive day. So that different populations can mess around and you can actually mess around with them and see which one you like better. So again, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. I'd really appreciate it if you did. And let me know what you guys think. Send your questions my way for those Q&A shows. You know how much I love them. They help me out with content. So let me know what you guys think. Definitely subscribe. And the podcast listeners, thank you so much for listening. My numbers have been going up pretty steadily, so I really like that. Thank you very much. And if you guys have any questions, shoot them over to me for the Q&A. You guys are definitely in that too. And until next time, guys, also have a really good day. And until next time, guys, keep building that foundation.